Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to our first ever live stream for the Wausau primary election night. We got actually more than just Wausau primaries here. Oops, forgot to mute my other laptop. So we got more than just Wausau primaries. Actually, got stuff going on the village of Kronenwetter as well. But we are going to be talking about obviously the mayor's race. We got a three-way primary between Katie Rosenberg, Doug Denny, and Christopher Wood. We got city council race in District 4, which is in District 15. We're going to talk in more depth. District 15 for county board. We're going to talk in more depth about that, but those are both races that are sort of in name only because one of the candidates in each of those sort of dropped out after the ballot came about. We'll talk about that in more depth. And then Kronenwetter Village Board Race. And there's a lot going on in Kronenwetter. We're actually going to break some news on the channel tonight on the live stream about stuff going on in Kronenwetter. That's something that's coming up tomorrow night. So we'll talk about that. Plus some other like state election news that popped up today that I think is interesting to look at. In case you're wondering who this is with me, this is Devon Welsh, and Devon is a freelance writer who's been doing some writing for the Wausonian and for City Pages as well. How's it going, Devon?
Very well. Thank you for having me here. And
Yeah,
I see my role as asking the obvious questions and letting you answer them. So,
yeah, for sure, for sure. And Devon, this is Devon's first election night, so pretty exciting stuff. Now, the newsroom tradition back in the day used to be to have election night pizza, but it's hard to eat pizza together over live stream, so I'll have to skip that one, I guess.
yeah, for the general, we could plan ahead and each have pizza that we eat separately.
Yeah, maybe we can do that next time for sure. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, polls close at 8 p.m. and we're going to be keeping an eye on the election results. And meanwhile, we're going to kind of go through the kind of talk about each of the elections that we're seeing tonight. And if you guys want to ask questions, I see Catherine Kronenwetter in the comments. Welcome to the show. Thanks for watching. And feel free to leave questions in the chat. We'll be taking breaks to answer questions from that. Of course, we kind of have to be a little bit careful not to you have to kind of maintain some journalistic integrity. So there's only I'll have to be a little bit careful in my responses, as will Devin, I assume. But yeah, feel free to ask your questions. We'll answer them. And meanwhile, I guess we could first talk about the mayor's race. So we
Mhm.
have incumbent mayor Katie Rosenberg, and she's being challenged by Doug Denny. Doug Denny is the District 4 city council member, and also being challenged by Chris Wood. And that's made things a little bit interesting, wouldn't you say, Devin?
Yeah, it's been a pretty fascinating one. One of the more fascinating election stories that I've heard this year, even including on the national level. So, uh,
Mhm.
I mean, really, it is an interesting story.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because you had this guy who's spent time on the 400 block over the summer making these anti-Semitic statements, uh, peddling these conspiracy theories about Jewish people. And so at the time, I was like the first person to write about this. And I thought it was significant. One, because he was causing such a stir that like business owners were organizing purchases of air horns to try to drown him out from his speeches, and also because he did say he was going to run for mayor. And I kind of wondered, I'm like, it's a pretty high bar, but not a really high bar. Of 200 signatures is not that high a bar to get on the ballot. And I wondered if he'd be able to do it. What did you think going in? Did you think he'd be able to get that many signatures?
Oh. I actually had no idea as to the level of support that he would have in Wausau. I guess it was somewhat surprising that he did manage to get that number of signatures, but I'm quite curious as to how many votes he will get in this primary. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And another question that I actually had about the primary while we're talking about the mayor's race is, will these results be some indication as to who might be favored going into the general in terms of the mayor's race.
Yeah, definitely wanted to talk about that because I kind of had, and I'm going to bring that up a little bit later, but I think, well, I guess we can talk about it now. Um, I think I gotta think that anything short of getting first place for Mayor Katie Rosenberg would be kind of a blow. Do you agree with that analysis?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, I'm curious to see the difference because the electorate that comes out for the primary versus the electorate that comes out for the general, um, I imagine there'll be some differences there in terms of composition of voting.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting is that like we usually don't have polls for these local races. It's something I was trying to figure out if there's a way I could solve that where I could actually do conduct polls somehow, or
Mhm.
I don't think there is. There might be. I've heard kind of rumors that maybe some of the party apparati. I don't know what's the right word there.
Mm.
I think some of them. Yeah, I think some of them conduct their own polling, but I got to think they probably wouldn't share it unless it was favorable to their candidates. And either way, I've never really been privy to that. So in a way, this primary almost serves like an early poll.
Exactly right, right. And it could be a profoundly shocking primary as well if Chris Wood does manage to get through to the general.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was gonna say for him. Anything short of last place would be a victory on his side
Yeah,
for sure.
to
And
be
then I
sure.
would say for Doug, victory would probably be getting pretty close to Mayor Katie. I don't think he has to beat her in this primary to feel good about his chances. Of course, if it was like a landslide defeat, he might have to worry a little bit. But I think as long as he gets close, I think that probably sets him up well for the general election.
And I would say in any case, if he does make it through and beat Chris Wood, he sets himself up as a kind of anti-Katie Rosenberg vote, which, could help kind of swing things in his direction when it comes to the general.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because kind of like is a good segue to I was looking at the ads that they put up. So I came across both of them on Facebook. So they were both running ads. Mayor Katie's was basically a picture of her and some bullet points that said clean water, affordability, inclusivity, and goats! Exclamation mark. And then later I came across Doug's, and Doug's was experience gets a tough job done. What do you think about those slogans?
Um, Katie Rosenberg's is kind of leaning into some of the, I don't know, you would say memes that she has cultivated during her tenure, some of the sort of standout
Mhm.
events that have taken place. Doug Denny's is kind of interesting because, you know, he's running against an incumbent mayor and using the term experience in his advertisement. It's a little counterintuitive. You'd think that Katie Rosenberg would be using the term experience. But I did appreciate the sort of iconography of his lawn signs, yard signs that have been around Wausau. The glasses.
Yeah.
I think the glasses kind of go a long way towards relaying that message of experience or of kind of, a sober second look at politics in the city. I thought it was eye catching and kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely different. I can't say that I've seen a yard sign motif quite like that before in local politics. So,
Yeah.
very interesting approach.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
But you're
Um,
right.
and-
Katie really leaned into the meme side, which I think was. I mean, I think people have a lot of memes about her or ones that she's cultivated. The goats are definitely a big one. I know, like at one point, she was getting all these like stuffed goats sent to her at her office.
mm,
So I
mhm.
thought that was it kind of makes some sense. Now the one thing I'm really struggled with is in our polling for the best of Wausau, like she's been enormously popular in that survey. And my old boss Tammy had warned me that just because someone is really popular, it's the mayor is always wins like favorite local politician,
Right.
but I don't know because I don't have access to the data before 2020. I don't know if that was if how much more it was like because it's quite a landslide. She gets it's like every vote is like Mayor Katie, Mayor Katie, Mayor Katie, and then it's like everyone else gets like maybe 2 or 3 votes,
Right. Well,
which
is
is very
there
limited.
a least popular local politician category?
No, funny you bring that up because, like, in the early days of City Pages, when they first started doing the survey, they did have that. And the funny thing is, the mayor would usually win both of them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that
Yeah,
probably if you had a least popular, then she would also win, sort of indicating that people are just, saying the one that they know, or,
right.
the mayor, the current mayor kind of dominates all political conversations.
But what I don't know is it was it like 50%? Did they get like 50% of the votes for one and 50 for the other? Or because like in her case, I don't think that'd be possible because they're just the numbers are too high. It's like,
Right.
she's probably got like 10 times the vote of everyone else combined. And I wish I had access to that early data. Maybe if I ever run into Tammy again, I'll ask her about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wonder if people are voting for her, or if they were voting for people both as most beloved and most hated, or whatever the case may be at the same time. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much he can kind of run up the vote, or how popular her first term has turned out to be.
Yeah, you never really know because I think Milky felt like he was pretty safe in 2020, and well, he wasn't. He lost, and I think
Mhm.
it was a pretty big blow to him. He kind of disappeared from City Hall. He wasn't taking any reporter questions. City staff couldn't get a hold of him. He really did take it really rough, and yeah, it was a weird way to go out. So anything can happen. I know in my interview with Katie Rosenberg, she also said like, she's not taking anything for granted. She knows that there's always the possibility that you can lose. And from what I've seen, I'm curious about your impressions on the yard signs because I can't say one stood out from the other as far as numbers of yard signs. I see a lot of Doug Denny signs and I see a lot of Mayor Katie signs.
I live outside of the city, so
Yeah.
I don't have a comprehensive idea, but I actually had the thought the other day that I've seen very few Katie Rosenberg signs in my time in Wausau, and I see many Doug Denny signs.
That's funny
Um,
because I
yeah,
kind of felt like I've been seeing more Doug Denny signs as well, and I didn't know if I
yeah,
was noticing them more because I'm used to seeing because I saw them 4 years ago.
yeah.
And actually, that's kind of surprising in my neighborhood. My neighborhood's like leans fairly left. It has voted for some of the left-leaning members of the school board when others didn't, for example.
Mhm.
So I've been surprised at the number of Doug Denny signs I've been seeing. I wonder. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, another thing that I'm wondering about in terms of the mayor's race is and maybe you can correct me here, but how much does political the where you fall on the political spectrum come into play versus just being dissatisfied with the direction of the city in the last number of years? Um, because it's not as if the candidates have branded themselves, with a political party, or they have this close affiliation with either political party, and the lack. It just seems to me that it has a slightly different character to it, a sense of, oh, am I satisfied with where things are going, or am I not? And if I'm not satisfied, then maybe I'm going to vote for Doug Denny. But if I am, then I'll vote for the current mayor.
Well, I think that's a good question, and a long time ago, I would have told you that partisan politics didn't play that much of a role, but I think that's changed a lot. I think that changed since the election of Donald Trump.
Mhm.
After his election, I saw a lot of young progressives get involved in politics, and then some of the stuff that they did, I think, sparked a number of conservatives to want to get more involved. And I think what we're seeing now is like definitely more definitely more partisan influence on both sides of the coin in local politics,
Mhm.
which is kind of a trend I saw coming. I started seeing some political operations in the Stevens Point elections toward the end of my time there around 2014. And
Mhm.
so I kind of thought, like, I wonder if this is going to start spreading. And then I think it would have taken longer, but I think Trump's election sparked, like I said, I think it sparked those young progressives to start running for local offices, and then conservatives to run too. So now we've seen like an explosion of elections, like
Mhm.
outside of the primary, like the actual general election. It has to be the most number of elections, contested races, I mean, that I've ever seen. It's
Mhm.
it's enormous. It has to be the biggest one definitely that I've covered. Maybe in county history, I'm not sure. But getting back to your question, I think with the mayor's race, I think it's more complicated. I don't think it just goes along partisan lines,
Mhm.
and it's also kind of, it's not always that legible either. Like, I mean, Rosenberg, I think she certainly aligns herself with left leaning politicians.
Mhm.
I think that's most of her base. And Doug is pretty obviously conservative, but like Mayor Milky was kind of more hard to pin down in that regard. And I think the Republicans in the area were pushing for Robert Milky almost more as on a reactionary basis. But you saw a lot of weird stuff, like where I live in District 1, you had Carol Lukens versus John Kroll, and Carol Lukens was showing up on these left-leaning checklists, and John Kroll, who like works for the energy department and is like a conservation guy, pretty left-leaning himself, was like appearing on these right-leaning lists, and it was kind
Mhm.
of a weird mix. So
Mhm.
um, it's kind of bizarre, but I think in this case there probably is more conservative push for Doug Denny, because I think he's more obviously conservative than, say, like Robert Milky was in 2020.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, yeah, and somehow the glasses, the going back to the icon of the glasses on his signs, somehow effectively communicates that without even needing to use a single word.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, which, by the way, do I have to worry that people are going to think this is a Doug Denny support signal? Like,
Perhaps, yeah, your
they are
glasses.
both Ray Bans. They're different. These are the Wayfarers, which I think are cooler than the
Right.
ones that Doug has. But sorry, Doug, gonna get mad at me for that. But
Yeah, you're subtly signaling that you would endorse Denny with your glasses. And me not wearing glasses, obviously, I'm signaling my support for Mayor Katie.
right, we can have the debate later.
Yeah.
We can take sides and hash it out.
Yeah, right.
That is something I would like to do. I think it'd be really fun to have a Doug Denny or a Doug Denny Mayor Katie debate here.
Yeah,
Either do it
absolutely.
as a live stream or it'd be a live stream either way, but have it do it remotely or actually have it on location.
Hmm.
So we'll talk about that. So that's the mayor's race, and then one little thing I wanted to talk about with that, and yeah, we're about 10 minutes before the polls close. We got a lot of races to talk about. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is going pretty well. The one other thing I was going to say is I got a couple messages that people had received a campaign email from Denny last night, and who said they didn't sign up for his list. So I think that's
Oh.
maybe a little strange. Not like maybe not the biggest deal in the world, but a little odd.
Hmm.
And I don't know if he just accidentally threw some people on that he didn't necessarily opt into his list, but it's pretty minor. I don't think I'd even write about something that minor. But
Hmm.
let's move on to City Council District 4.
All right.
Now this was Doug Denny's district, so he's not running because he's running for mayor.
Yes.
and you have former city council member Tom Neal, and then Deb Weiss, who she has like a organic food business and started an alternative farmers market and used to chair the Commission for a Greener Tomorrow. And Vilius Lescais, I had not heard of him before he entered the race.
Mhm.
I apologize if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but you had spoken to all of this. Maybe you can kind of explain this race, because this is one where we had a candidate drop out.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this was my first experience covering city politics, and I interviewed both Tom Neal and Deborah Weiss, who you have experience with both. And I also reached out to Vilius Leskis, I'm pronouncing it, going a different
Let's
direction than
gotcha.
me. And he was kind of a mysterious figure in the sense that he filed his paperwork and qualified for the primary and then immediately dropped out of the primary. But he was very kind of gracious in explaining that, he had personal issues that came up and all of that. So the primary that's happening this evening or today is rather superfluous. Presumably, Tom Neal and Deborah Weiss will make it to the final election. And yeah, if you wanted me to give something of a rundown of the two candidates, Deborah Weiss is an organic farmer who has her own business and who started the Wausau Alternative Farmers Market, which was sort of an attempt to have more room for people to sell local produce and other things, because the Wausau Farmers Market is more selective and has limited spots. And her politics I would characterize as localist, I guess you could say, in the sense that she's concerned with local the local food economy, local water conservation, and local business. She's kind of an eccentric candidate as well, in the sense that she's describes herself as a bard, which is a kind of a pagan spiritual identity. So she has a kind of spiritual relationship with nature that kind of informs her politics. And Tom Neal, on the other hand, I guess, is the former holder of this district prior to stepping down due to possibly moving out of the area. And now that he's for sure staying in Wausau, he's running again to retake his seat on the city council. And he's kind of he's had a career in marketing, and I feel like that sort of informs the way that he approaches city politics. He's all about growing the city, improving its brand to attract younger people, to attract businesses to the area, growing the tax base, all about development, I guess, was the takeaway that I got from my interview with him.
And you learned a little bit about Vilius, right?
I did,
Like
yeah.
you didn't really get to talk to him, but you did a little research.
I did a little research. He's basically, I can just bring up the notes that I got on him, because he's currently an attorney. He spent his whole career in the military, had kind of an impressive military career, actually. He's an Army Green Beret colonel who had multiple tours in Iraq, and who, yeah, has done airborne training, who has published academically on various military issues in the Baltics. He has an incredibly impressive resume in the military, so he could have been an interesting candidate.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that situation in a second. I just want to acknowledge some of the people in the chat. We got Randall Dunn in the chat. Thank you. He says you can do anything. Thanks. Appreciate that. Catherine Kronenwetter has been leaving a lot of messages, and appreciate that. And then we got Zola Jesus in the chat, a famous musician, saying, "I love the idea of a live in-person mayoral debate. That's cool."
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'd really love to do that on the stream. I think that'd be a lot of fun if we
Yeah.
can set that up. Scheduling might be a challenge, but if we can make it happen, I think that'd be a ton of fun. Or we can always, if there is already going to be one that's live streaming, we can live stream it and react together, something like that.
Hmm.
And then JCGM says, "You two are great journalists, tough but easygoing. Thanks for the keeping the city informed. Appreciate that." And Catherine says, "That was a nice way of saying I talk too much." That's not what we're saying. We're very happy to have your messages, so we appreciate it.
No, no, that's great.
And then Mark Sanford said, "This coverage has been very educational. Thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of positive comments. So nice to see that." Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of education, yeah. So I want to explain how this is a pretty unusual situation. I haven't come across this before, where a candidate had basically gotten on the ballot and then said, "Yeah, I'm not interested." So I don't know what would happen if they actually won. And um, in District 4, at least, I think Tom Neal has name recognition, and I think Deb Weiss has some too.
Hmm.
And we did write about it and stuff. So I don't think Vilius Leskis, is that how you said it? Leskis?
That's how I pronounce it, Leskis. Yeah.
I'll go with that. I don't think it'll probably happen, but that might happen in our next race. So we also will see County Board District 15, and that features incumbent Joel Straub, who was on the Kronenwetter Village Board as well, ran for village president and lost in the primary. Randy Pfifferk, who used to be on the county board, also used to work in the development department at the village of Kronenwetter. He is currently in the Wausau city of Wausau development department, and he left kind of during that whole employee exodus. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that in 2021 and 22. And then
Hmm.
Alex Vedvik, who is currently on the village board now. Alex is also, like Vilius, had decided not to run, and I actually broke the news of him not running, apparently, because the village clerk put out a press release a couple days later confirming that he was, although he appeared on the ballot, he wasn't. He told me he had some personal problems, and I found this out because I sent out our candidate questionnaires, and I sent like kind of a reminder, "Hey, I'm going to need this in a week or so if you want to be in it." And Alex responded and said that he wasn't able to, had some stuff going on, personal stuff. Obviously, didn't disclose what that is, and I didn't, is what it is, I guess. So
Yeah.
he said he wasn't going to consider himself a candidate, but of course he's still on the ballot. Now this one, there's a possibility because Alex is on the village board, so people in Kronenwetter know him. There is a
Mm.
possibility he might still win, and I think it'd be really interesting to see what happens if that's the case.
Yeah. Because did he indicate to you whether he would absolutely decline if he did get to the general election, or did he leave it open?
The impression I got was he was not interested in it, but he didn't flat out say he would decline, and it'd be interesting to see what happens if he actually does win tonight. By the way, polls closing in 2 minutes, so
Mm.
if you
And
haven't
just
voted.
for my own information, actually, and maybe for the viewers, where are you checking the results when they do come in?
Oh, well, glad you asked, Devon. If you go to marathoncounty.gov and you go under, actually, where did they put that?
Yeah,
I
that's
think
fine.
honestly, I think I Googled it.
Okay.
But they have, it's marathoncounty.gov /services /elections -voting /results. So that's a lot to get to.
Okay. I found it by searching Marathon County election results.
Yeah, that's probably what
Uh,
I searched for too. But
okay.
they've the clerk. I actually have to give a shout out to the county clerk. She really did put together like a pretty good election page, and she kept like a Google Doc that she was constantly updating that anyone could access of all the candidates that were coming in.
Mm.
And that was something that was kind of unusual this time, is that all these we had a lot of candidates come in at the very last minute because they took out all their papers online instead of going to the clerk's office. And that was kind of a
Oh,
problem. That was kind of a problem because there was a lot of last minute scrambling, the clerk told me. And because people, like, if you go to the office, then the clerk can say, well, you got to make sure you do this, this, and this, and that. But if you don't go in, you just take out the papers online, you're not really going to get that.
yeah.
So there's a lot of like kind of last minute haranguing and scrambling around to make sure everyone got the stuff that they need. And we did have one. Maybe I can talk about this a little bit. There was a candidate in County Board District 3, I want to say, or was it 5? I think it was either 3 or 5. I can't
Mhm.
remember off the top of my head. And Joanne Eaglekraut, she was challenging Cody Hart, and she had a couple of her signatures challenged enough that she didn't have enough to appear on the ballot. Now there's an appeal, and supposedly the results of that appeal to the state, to the Wisconsin Elections Commission, is supposed to come back today. So that should be interesting. Or not today, this week. Excuse me.
And so if she does end up getting put back on the ballot, are there only two candidates in that case, or are there multiple?
Only 2, yeah. So yeah,
That's
there's
good.
time. Otherwise, I think they would have had to rush the decision if it would have created a primary. But
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah,
yeah.
interesting for like four. So that would make 14 races. Right now, there's 13,
And
and
so, yeah, that's historically very high.
it's very high. But also only one primary out of all those 14. It's kind of interesting how that panned out.
And how many of those races, or how many of the races we're looking at tonight, I guess to be specific, other than the mayor's race, do you see breaking down along those more partisan lines as you had described earlier about this kind of influence from the 2016 election? District 4, I found not so much. They obviously, the two candidates have their differences,
Right.
but they both, I would say, lean to the left if push came to shove and I had to describe their political orientation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Fair description of them. And as far as a county board district 15, I don't think it's about that. I think it's
Mm.
about. I'm trying to tread very carefully. So Jill Straub was one of several board members, Kronenwetter Village board members, who a lot of employees basically accused of harassing them to the point where they wanted to quit. I think we saw something like 20 some employees quit within a couple year time period. And these are, I mean, when I say employees, these are like department heads. Like you saw the village clerk turn over a couple times, the public works director turned over a couple of times, finance director, all of these. And
Mhm.
so I think it's more about, I really don't know the politics of any of them involved. So I think it's more of like kind of this group of board members who were kind of responsible for that versus people who thought maybe that wasn't such a good idea. So I'd say it's a little more complicated in D15.
Yeah.
And then I think a lot of that is also what's going on with the Kronenwetter Village Board race, where we've got 9 candidates for 3 seats, and this is the other one for tonight. 3 of them will be eliminated tonight. I'm sorry, my sinuses are they're still not fully cleared out, so I might sound a little froggy. But
Oh, no problem.
we got 9 candidates. 3 will be eliminated tonight, so 6 will go on to the main election. This is a historic race. We've never had this many candidates in the village of Kronenwetter before. And there was a little snafu around that I discovered that some board members weren't very happy about. I want to share this clip from Channel 9. This was right after.
Yeah, please.
This was right after the announcement came down. So the clerk got in a little bit of trouble for this.
Okay.
WAOW, we've got you covered.
At 4, one area community is going to see quite the primary ballot later this year. Not just 2 or 3 candidates filed, 9 did.
News 9's Jimmy Sadowski spoke with officials in Kronenwetter about this record-setting number.
A record 9 candidates are running for the Kronenwetter Board of Trustees, and that means registered voters are going to have to hold a primary election come February, and there's a lot of people to consider for just 6 spots. The village has only had to call for a primary election twice before, and they're excited. The village clerk says hit the polls to make sure your voice is heard.
New faces, you want new ideas, and form new relationships. This is the time to get out there and vote, because
Yeah, that's the part that got people a little ticked off, because some the implication seemed to be to some of the sitting board members that she was advocating for new board members to be elected as opposed to the incumbents. But we can play the rest.
as we really need the votes. We want the best people that the village can have to run it.
After the field is narrowed to 6, you'll have your chance to vote for 3 in the April election. Bobby wants to stress that you should do your research on the candidates and go back and watch old meetings if you've got the time. That way, when it comes time for a decision, it's well informed. And again, the primary election is going to be held on February 20th, just about a month and a half away. Then, the top 6 candidates go on to the spring election in April. In Kronenwetter, Jimmy Sadowski, News 9, WAOW.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that
Her remarks
even-
certainly seem to indicate a desire for fresh faces on the board.
yeah, and there's some backstory. The clerk. Well, like she's like the 3rd or 4th clerk in like 4 years. They've gone through quite a few there.
Right.
The other ones, I think they had a clerk that was there for like 20 years or something like that, and then she retired, and after that, like they really had trouble keeping any clerks there, as they did with a lot of their staff. So there's kind of there's a lot of turmoil in Kronenwetter, and the message on the last election was change and kind of bringing sanity back to the board is what they were saying. I think the current board members who are being accused of that would say that they're just trying to fix the issues, and that employees keep doing the wrong thing, and they're trying to make them do the right thing. So that's me steel manning both sides of the argument there.
Yeah.
So
nice.
and of course, I've written about how one of the board members, Ken Charneski, is suing the village. If you haven't checked out the Wausonian article about that, and then the follow-up article with the response to the lawsuit I think it's worth reading. It's pretty interesting stuff. I enjoyed reading the lawsuits, so hopefully I wrote a compelling narrative about them. But he's basically suing the village over open records, saying that that the invoices from the village attorney, the contracted village attorney, should have been made available to him and weren't. Lee Tironi, the village attorney's response basically was that, well, I'm not actually a village official, so you can't sue to get me to perform a government action because I'm not a government official.
Right.
And the other person he sued was the former interim administrator, who is no longer under contract. So he's saying, he says, and you can't really sue her because there's no contract to enforce. That's the only thing that ties her to a governing body. And then Bobby Clerk is also, or Bobby Burke Labarge, Bobby Joe Burke Labarge, who we just saw, also was named in that suit. And he didn't really defend her, other than Charneski accused her of not posting this legal notice, and he posted a picture with the notice hanging on the village, what I presume to be the village wall. So I guess he kind of did defend her in some ways. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that case pans out. And then one more thing that happened, there's a special meeting tomorrow night, because apparently the village in 2022 made a decision to buy this fire truck, but apparently they never actually approved the borrow to buy the fire truck. So apparently the accusations are that some village officials just did this on their own and weren't supposed to. And also, oh, it gets better. So apparently they were supposed to make their first payment in January and they didn't because the email to make the payment was sent to the finance director, who has already quit and been replaced by yet another finance director.
Okay.
So this all came about because Incredible Bank was like, hey, you owe us the first payment for this fire truck that you bought, and haven't heard from you. Maybe you ought to. So you might want to pay. You might want to. You might want to like take care of that. So now there's like I heard the tip that I got was that the village president was going to be brought up on, like they were going to try to like remove him from office because he committed fraud. I don't see anything like that in the Kronenwetter minutes. So doesn't sound like that. It sounds like they took a more measured tone when they actually put the meeting together. But yeah, that's all I'll be spending tomorrow night. So that's fun.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
Just taking a
And
look to
so
see if we got no results yet. Well, I didn't think so, but I will
I'll be
be
curious
like
to see. Yeah, go ahead.
periodically refreshing the page to see if there's any results.
I'll be curious to see how voters respond to, all of that chaos.
Yeah, I mean, some incumbents didn't make it in the last round, so after all the chaos was kind of brought to light, which I had a
hmm
big hand in doing.
hmm
So yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens this time around.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to see I mean, obviously it's it's already too late to vote, but if you're curious who's running, we have profiles on the Wausonian that you can go see, thewausonian.com in case you're interested. So that's all the
hmm
races that we're waiting to see come to light. But interesting. I'm gonna say Brunt Jacobson. Let's get to in Merrill, and this happened. I think this happened. Was this the same year? Oh no, it was earlier. I'm sorry, it was earlier than Mayor Katie. I believe it was 28. I want to say 2018. Yeah, it was. I'm sorry, it was 2018. Mayor Derek Woolner ran as like, God, what was he like 25? I think when he ran for office.
Or even maybe younger. I'm not sure, but
He was pretty young. He challenged like the former mayor. He challenged him. I think was it Bill Bielecki was his name, I think.
I'm not sure. I'm
And
not
he
sure.
was
This was
basically
kind
old
of
enough.
before my time.
Yeah, he was basically old enough to be his grandpa, which is like a really interesting generation dynamic.
Yeah, where there's like a gap of multiple generations between the two candidates.
And what was going on up there is like there was let me think. I know there was a lot of turmoil up there over something, but I don't remember what it was. But I didn't really think he had that much of a chance. But what a surprise! He was elected
hmm
and defeated the incumbent mayor as a 20. I think 24, 25, maybe even younger. And it
hmm
was quite a surprise to everybody. And he was a one-term mayor. I think he actually chose not to run again for mayor. I
hmm
think one term was enough, and it was interesting going to those meetings. He really didn't seem in control when I went there. It kind of seemed like I'm trying to think of the analogy. Like it kind of looked like a kid trying to calm down the mob, sort of. Like that. I think he was used to being being the one shouting at the machine, and then when he was the machine, I don't think he quite knew how to handle it. Which, I mean, if you're 25, like that's probably not within your skill set yet.
Yeah,
And a lot of
absolutely.
people, I don't know if it ever is in their skill set.
hmm
Well, anyway, he is running for U.S. Senate. He just announced. So I'm going to pull up this. It's a YouTube short, so I have to be kind of careful on how to. He made the announcement on. Okay. All right. Is there a way to back this up? Nope.
So he's slightly older now, but is
Oh, it's happening. All right, hold on.
we're getting
Um,
results?
were you able to hear that at all?
No, not
Okay,
me.
good. It skipped to another very profane YouTube short. I was trying to
Oh.
stop it, and then I was like, "Well, that's interesting."
That wouldn't be good for this evening's live stream.
Probably not. I'm gonna try to do this really quickly.
Okay.
All right, so it'll just take a little while to load up.
President Trump promised he'd stop American jobs from going overseas. He promised he'd make America great again. We're not quite there yet. We need a 21st century 3Cs agenda. Theodore Roosevelt gave power back to the people with his 3Cs: conservation of natural resources, control of corporations, and consumer protection. With that blueprint, we can do it again. My name is Derek Wallner. I'm running for U.S. Senate, and I will fight to restore the old school conservative values that made this country great. President.
All right.
Interesting.
Yeah. What did you think about that, Devin?
I thought it was notable that he's running on the Republican ticket, and yet his political platform is so eccentric for the Republican ticket on a national level. To reference Teddy Roosevelt and to his 3Cs. It's just it's a unique position to take within the Republican Party. So I think that that's notable.
Yeah, it's definitely notable, and I got the impression he used to be more left leaning. Was that your impression as well?
I actually didn't really understand his political valence at the time when he was
Yeah,
mayor.
actually, I'd say it's pretty hard to pin down. He had like a very weird platform. I know disc golf was part of his platform. I can't
Okay.
remember what else. What else? It was a really it was a very much a 25-year-old's like political platform.
Yeah.
He was
I'd be curious.
interesting.
I'd be curious if he has always been registered as a Republican, or if that's a sort of an affiliation of opportunity in order to challenge Tammy Baldwin.
Right. Yeah, I looked at I looked at the rest of his YouTube channel, and he has a video about. I guess we could just play it. We got some time.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Let me just double check the results here. Nothing yet. Yeah, it'll take me just a second to find it here.
But yeah, he's 31 now, so he's a bit older, but he would still be one of the youngest senators in U.S. history. I wonder how much steam he can get just off of his age as a candidate, how much attention he can get for that. And is he running? I presume he must be running in a Republican primary for the U.S. Senate. That he's not the designated Republican opposition to Tammy Baldwin.
Man, I gotta tell you, I don't even know. Like, I'm so knee deep in all the stuff going on locally that
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
I'm confused. But let's look at his. Here's his YouTube channel.
Okay.
So progressive mayor embraces new political identity. So I haven't watched this. I don't know what he's gonna say.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello and happy first day of spring. It being the first day of spring, I thought it would be a good day to announce a bit of a new beginning for myself, politically speaking. I've been doing a lot of reading on the Gilded Age and the Progressive Era. And if you don't know about the Gilded Age, it was a time in American history with a lot of wealth inequality, bad working conditions, a bad economy. I find that it's, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to the situation of today. In a lot of ways, we're actually worse off today than we were back then. So since we find ourselves in a sort of second Gilded Age, I think it's only logical that to pull ourselves out of it, we're going to need a second Progressive Era. And that means we're going to need politicians like Teddy Roosevelt and Fighting Bob La Follette. And so that is my announcement for today. Inspired by the platforms and the history of Teddy Roosevelt and Bob La Follette, today I am declaring myself a Roosevelt Republican. Like Teddy Roosevelt 100 years ago, I believe that the problems we face today call for the same square deal that he offered Americans back then. Americans deserve a square deal. Americans deserve the 3 C's platform that Roosevelt ran on. Control corporations, consumer protection, and conservation of natural resources. Those 3 things are important because corporations are more powerful now than they were back then. Teddy Roosevelt didn't have to deal with the centralized banks.
Okay, so it seems like the longer version of the YouTube short that he put out today, but also the short contained his announcement for running for office. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I'm excited to see where his campaign goes. I think it's, as I said, intriguing. That he's kind of trying to look into the past to resuscitate this century-old political campaign of Teddy Roosevelt's and sort of look to the past for answers to today's problems. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. Definitely an interesting political figure in the area.
I thought it was. Yeah, I thought his comments about the Gilded Age was interesting because I've actually been kind of studying the Gilded Age myself lately, and I do think there are some parallels. Like, I think right now we're kind of in an age of where technology advance has sort of outpaced etiquette and is changing society in a way that we're not really keeping up with. So I think there are some parallels there. So I thought it was interesting that he mentioned that. It didn't make me necessarily want to be a Teddy Roosevelt Republican exactly, but
yeah,
that's cool. Should
definitely.
make for. I think he's challenging like a really tough. Tammy Baldwin is pretty entrenched. Like,
yeah,
especially being in a purple state like Wisconsin, for her to survive as long as she has, like, I think that's a tough machine to defeat. So, good luck. But it's kind of weird to jump from like mayor of Merrill to running for U.S. Senate. That's quite a leap.
It's quite a leap. And I think, as you say, he'll have difficulty running against Tammy Baldwin. I think prior to that, he'll have maybe even more difficulty in a Republican primary running against whatever candidate is more entrenched within the national party structure, because based on what he's talking about and his relative outsider status, I would imagine he'll have an upward battle fighting for resources from the party and getting through the primary.
Definitely. Well, as we wait for results to come in, and I'm not sure if they're going to come in piecemeal or just all at once. Hoping piecemeal so we can have a little excitement on the show. But do acknowledge.
Yeah.
We got Christine Martins in the chat saying, "What do you think about the Wausau District 5 and Marathon County Board District 5 races? Not a primary, but interested." So I have to go back and look. See if I can find. I'll have to go back and look to see which ones those are.
Let's see here.
I thought District 5 was the one with Joanne Kraut and Cody Hart.
Okay, maybe so. I need to find some information myself. Let's see. not good radio.
Right. That's
we
live
need to
stream.
find out who this. We need to find out who we need to talk about, though.
Oh, so District 5 is Gary Gisselman, who's Gary used to be a librarian at Marathon County Library, and he serves on the county board and because I think he serves on the county board right now as well, and I think Orlando is. Yeah, so Orlando Alfonso is challenging
Yes.
Gary there as well.
Okay. I'm curious of your thoughts about Orlando Alfonso, because the only experience that I have with him is reading his frequent commentaries in the Wausau Pilot and Review.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know a ton about Orlando. I know he ran, I think it was, I want to say 2 years ago, he ran for a city seat. Maybe it was this one 4 years ago, actually. Actually, it's probably 4 years ago that he ran for this one. I remember his name coming up before. Otherwise, I get the impression that he's a fairly conservative person, but beyond that, I don't know much. Maybe you know more because you've been reading his commentaries.
I don't know much either. I just I was fascinated by him because I would check the Wausau Pilot and Review and the commentaries that he would leave, or the sort of opinions, letters to the editor sort of thing, and it would almost always be him writing them. And so I was just fascinated. Who is this person, And yeah, they often have a conservative tone to them, but nothing that was too remarkable. They would just sort of be critiques of, the current city government from a conservative perspective.
Yeah, so that was my impression as well, that he was fairly conservative, and I think it'd be safe to say Gary Gisselman's fairly liberal, if you want to think in those terms. But he's like, Gary has kind of sided with the Doug Dinney and Com Killian block on the city council, which maybe sometimes includes Lou Larson and sometimes includes Becky McElhaney, depending what the issue is. Kind of this pro-environmental, I'm painting a really broad brush, but kind of let me put it this way: skeptical of developers the city works with. Gisselman was one of the ones that was targeted by Terrence Wall during the whole mall fiasco, the latest mall fiasco, and so one of the ones that he was calling for their resignations, which first off probably isn't a good look if you're trying to propose a project with the city, but also like he just had a lot of the facts wrong. His claim was that city council members needed to come in and be impartial. And a voter could think that's a good thing, but there's absolutely no requirement that a city council member has to have any impartiality. They're only responsible to their voters, and if the voters don't like what they did, they can vote them out of office next time. But you could come in and say, you literally could come in and say, I'm never voting for a TIF project ever. It's just never going to happen. Everyone that comes up, I'm going to say no. And that is perfectly within your rights. There's no rules. I think he was trying to conflate like a city council with like a judge who does need to be impartial.
Right. But
or
yeah,
at
obviously,
least should be. And judges, like the thing I learned from lawyers about judges is they kind of do what they want to. The only challenge is the appeals process. So if a judge like
mm,
really does something bizarre, the appeals process can come back and be overruled. But judges have a lot of leeway too. But yeah, the impartiality, that's really more for judges and not city council members. But
yeah, because I
uh,
mean, in the District 5 race, I mean, maybe you could see Gisselman versus Orlando as this Terrence Wall fiasco could be sort of a touchstone for voters in the district to say, oh, okay, well, Gary Gisselman was a target of Terrence Wall. Do I see that as a good thing? Do I agree with his stance on that project, or am I looking for a more conservative candidate that will be more supportive of these types of developers? Do you think that would be a fair sort of way of understanding Orlando's challenge?
well, I don't know, because the thing is, like, there's a lot of so okay, this was what was weird, because like Meg Ellison at WSAU took this really, like, this kind of weird partisan stance. Like she definitely took a side with Terrence Wall on this whole matter. I think because she doesn't like Tom Killian, and
Mm,
probably doesn't like Gary Gilselman either. Sees them as left leaning, which is sort of true. It's complicated, especially with Tom Killian. It's absolutely complicated,
mm,
because he's definitely more fiscally conservative than you would expect from someone left leaning, I guess. But it's definitely complicated when it comes to Killian. But anyway, so she's painted Killian as 100% left leaning. Everyone has to be one or the other, kind of, in her world, I think. So
yeah, yeah.
Killian is left, so Terrence Wall is against him. So Terrence Wall must be good, must be on my side. So she had like this long fawning interview with Terrence Wall on her show that she didn't challenge him on anything, including a lot of the ridiculous assertions he made about the legality of impartiality on the city council.
Mhm.
And I was going somewhere with that, wasn't I?
That
Oh, the
it's more
business.
complicated. That Gisselman's, relationship to the Terrence Wall issue, is
Oh,
more
yeah, yeah, yeah.
complicated.
So like, you might think, okay, so right leaning people are on Terrence Wall's side, but I'll tell you, like, a lot of the commentary I get, both in my comment section and just behind the scenes, like, comes from conservative people who are really skeptical about the T-Wall situation. And
Hmm.
so for them, I think they come maybe more from an anti-Mayor Katie stance, but also, just I think just everybody is kind of skeptical of this project, and especially when a project has proven that it doesn't want to deliver, it hasn't delivered once, and it's failed in some other places. I think a lot of people were skeptical of that, and I don't think it necessarily fell on partisan lines. So I think that was more like Meg Ellison needing it to shove it into very clear partisan lines so she could understand it.
Yeah, right, right.
Mhm.
And I guess that's the fascinating thing about city politics and these city political candidates, is that they're not so shoehorned into these categories that you find on the national level.
Mhm.
People can be sort of more complex in their character and in their views on what the city ought to be doing.
Yeah, really, that's how it's supposed to be. Like, these are nonpartisan positions. That was always the case. And what I'll say, like, in the early days of covering a lot of these races, even back when I was in Stevens Point, like, most of the time when you interviewed people for why they were running, they'd say, like, "Oh, I'm retired and I don't have anything better to do." Or
Mm,
like, they put it obviously a little more diplomatically than that, but that was ipso facto basically the answer. And I don't think we're getting that same response anymore. I think people are more engaged and maybe are leaning a little more partisan, although I think we're starting to see a little less of that. And I think it's pulled back a little from that. So
mm.
Oh, and one thing we haven't really covered yet is the number
Mhm.
of people who pulled out of the county board, the number of incumbents that dropped.
Oh, yeah. Right. Maybe you have that somewhere, the number, and maybe
Mm.
you can put it in perspective as to how unusual that number is.
It is pretty unusual. 10 people, and they are Michelle Van Cray, Rebecca Book, Dave Overbeck, who used to also be a city council member back in the day, Allison Leahy, Craig McEwen, who was the board vice chair. You usually don't see vice chairs step down.
Hmm.
Crystal Bushman, Dennis Gonering, Andrew Vensky, Bruce Lamont, and Bobby Niemeyer. Bobby is interesting. I didn't really get to know him much, but he's like a really young. I think he was really young,
Mm.
maybe like 21 or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, I forgot exactly how old, but he was one of the new members, and he was kind of a young conservative.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's only so I can't. I think we were kind of talking about this offline before, but I really can't discern a pattern. There's a couple people who were kind of in the wave of they were kind of in the post Trump young progressive wave that I mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
Some would be categorized in the reaction to that wave.
Hmm.
Some are kind of old guard that were there before, like Craig McEwen. So and there's young people who left, there's older people who left, and everyone in between. So there really isn't a pattern that you could point to without like an incredible amount of massaging.
Hmm.
I don't think you could even massage it. There just simply is no pattern to this, like who's left. There's four of them are city of Wausau districts. The other ones are rural, so you can't say there's just simply no pattern to it, and I'm not sure. That's why I thought it would be interesting if we ever. I just don't know if we'd have time with so much election stuff to cover, but it would be interesting to reach out to a bunch of them and just say, "Hey, why did you decide not to run?" Because I'm curious what the response would be.
Yeah, I'd be very curious. And I wonder, have you heard anything about the county board that could be similar to the chaos in Kronenwetter that you've been talking about earlier in the stream? You know, a sense that a general dysfunction would be leading people to resign.
Actually, no. So that's the funny thing. I would have thought if that were to happen, I would have thought it would have happened after the Community for All resolution, because that was probably kind of the ground zero for controversial issues. You had the New
Hmm.
York Times write about it, and ipso facto, Wausau kind of got painted like this racist hellhole
Hmm.
by them, and like a lot of people, that was crazy because a lot of people on the left and right were ticked about that story that they
Yeah.
wrote about it. And I would have thought it was really contentious. And I would have thought if there was any time that board members would have stepped down, it would have been after that resolution.
Hmm.
But that didn't happen. We didn't really see that in 2022. We're seeing that now. And I'm not sure, also left, right, also all over the board in that case. Like you can't, again, there's really just no pattern to it.
Yeah. Something that we should try to look into because
Mhm.
if there's no easy answer, there must be some interesting explanation.
I mean, there could not be. It could just be everyone chose not to run anymore.
Yeah, it could
I
just
mean,
be a
sometimes
random pattern.
it could be. It really could be. You just never know.
Yeah.
There's an old joke about how journalists count, and the journalists count 1, 2 trend. So the
Yeah.
idea is like it
Right.
doesn't take us very long to say, "Ooh, there's a trend. Let's write about it."
Yeah. Right. Right.
So
Right.
there can be like some pattern recognition bias where you want to see something interesting, so you see something interesting.
Um, do we have any results coming up? Um, Maybe in the meantime, we could ask the viewers if they have any questions about anything that we've spoken about on the stream so far, or something that we haven't touched on.
Yeah, for sure. We got 18 people watching right now. We've been as high as in the early low 20s. So a lot of people are checking it out. And guys, if you haven't hit the like button, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel because I think we're going to be using it more. And otherwise, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. We'll try to respond to as many questions as we can. Probably, I'm sure we'll get to all of them because we don't have that many.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine Kronenwetter says, like, sub, all the YouTube things. Appreciate that, Catherine. Please do all the YouTube things for us. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe while we're waiting for results, you could talk about your feelings covering you're going to be covering the Wausau school board race. What are your thoughts going into that?
I haven't gotten my thoughts fully together, but it'll be my first time covering school board elections, so it'll be fascinating just on the level of getting to learn what kinds of people are running for the school board. For starters, I mean, whether it's parents of children that are currently enrolled in schools in the area, or whether it's people that have kind of a broader vision for how schools factor into city politics. And I suppose the question of the restructuring of the school system in the area will be top of mind for a number of candidates.
Yeah, the restructure was definitely like the big. That was the big main issue on the school board, of which there were many things. But I thought that was probably the main thing. Of course, the restructuring was killed. The idea that the superintendent had put forward, I think he was really pushing for it, which would have combined East and West high schools into one high school, and then kind of made this series of schools where you'd be at each school for like 2 years. So you'd be like 2 years at middle school, 2 years at the junior high. I can't even remember the exact structure. It was.
I have to interrupt, Brian. The results are in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we don't want to leave the people waiting any longer. We've got one big drop of all of the results.
Wow, really? I've been refreshing. I'm not getting anything.
I'm getting.
I'll just restart it.
Restart
Don't go without me.
Yeah.
Don't go without me.
I won't start. I'll just take a peek here.
Wait, where are you? Hold on, I've been going.
See what
Which
happened.
page are you looking at?
marathoncounty.gov/services/elections-voting/results.
Yeah. I've
If
been going
I could put it
to
in the chat here if I could.
yeah, well, that's the page I'm on, but I've been going to election summary and nothing's coming up. I've been getting the zeros.
Here. Let me send you a link to the document itself in the private chat that we have here in our platform here.
Oh yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Oh, they're all there. Okay, let's go through it. Let me share the screen here.
Okay, wonderful.
Wait, I'm trying to make the private chat. That's so weird that it wouldn't refresh on my end, huh? Yeah, we got all the precincts have been completed. 30 of 30 of 26,329 registered voters. There were 5,438 casts. So not a huge. Seemed like typical from what I look. All right, so yeah, let's see. County District Supervisor 15. Looks like Randy Fifrick got the most votes at 50.81% of the vote, followed by Joel Straub at 28.86 and Alexander Vedvik at 19.92. So we don't have to worry about what happens if Alex wins. We didn't.
Okay.
We were kind of wondering about that, and one write-in. So I wonder someone wrote somebody in. I'm curious who that might be. Yeah. I'm always curious. Because, sometimes I don't know if people just write Batman or Superman.
Yeah.
I had a friend that would always write Captain Kirk. because
Okay.
his mom would make him go vote, and he hated voting, so that's what he would write.
That's great.
All right, let's go on to village trustee for Kronenwetter. Again, 6 are going through, and Aaron Mishka got the most, followed by Scott Dowell. That's a tough name to pronounce, eh?
Dowell. Yeah.
Dowell.
It's Dowell, I would say.
Dowell, yeah, followed by Ryan Leff. So these are all newcomers. These and then the Cindy Lee Bukowski Hoffman, also newcomer, Ken Charneski at 10.74%, and then Sean Dumais at 8.38. So those are the 6 that are going through. Kim Tapper and Joel Straub got the least amount of votes, I believe, and they're incumbents. They're not going through. Also, Tim Shaw didn't do very well. So those 3 are eliminated.
Interesting. So what we're seeing there is the newcomers getting voted in, and the incumbents largely getting voted out.
Kind of. Well, Kim and Joel were on the board, but were no longer on the board. So they were trying to get back seats.
I see.
Sean Dumais, and then Tim was on. Was Tim on the board? Yeah, Tim was the other one who was on, the other incumbent, I believe, and then who's didn't go through. He's the one incumbent who didn't go through, but
I see.
yeah, Sean Dumais is an incumbent, as is Ken Charneski, and they go through, but they were like the lowest of the people who went through.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm sure people want to get to
Yes.
the mayor, and it pretty much looks probably how I would have expected it to. So Katie got the most votes, 2,274 votes, with 52%, about 52.5% of the vote, followed by Doug Denny at 1,822 with 42.1% of the vote. And then Chris got 5% of the vote, which was 223 votes. So a few more than he got nomination signatures. Plenty to talk about there, and we'll kind of circle back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like in District 4, Tom Neal won pretty handily with 74% of the vote. Deb Weiss got 17.36, and Vilius Leskis, pronounce that right, got 6.74% of the vote. So no, we don't have to worry about what happens if either of the people who are on the ballot who don't want to run are elected.
Yeah.
And I guess it also was, we don't really care about this race, but if people are interested, and I don't mean to put it that way, but like Marshfield is kind of weird. I don't know if you know about this, Devon, but it's sort of like, I think half the city is in Marathon County and half is in was it Wood County or Clark County? It's like it's kind of a weird area.
Interesting.
Looks
I
like
did not know that.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty even race, except for this Charles Norton fellow didn't do very well, but the rest of them were all pretty close.
I wonder what made him stand apart. So
I don't know, but yeah. So
everyone else got an equal number.
Yeah, so Nicole Forst led the way at 271, followed by Steve Kaiser, I'm not sure which, 255, and Karen Ott. I know nothing about that race, so I don't know. Do you think were there any surprises tonight, Devon?
I would say no off the top of my head. I mean, I wasn't really sure how the District 4 primary would go between Tom Neal and Deborah Weiss, but I'm not surprised that he won so handily, considering he has such a long track record on the city council.
Yeah, and I kind of wondered how the pagan thing would play over with voters. That might be a bridge too far for just average regular folk, but she did get like 17% of the vote. So and these are low, these are low voting numbers. So I'd be curious to see what happens in the general.
Yeah, but I'm curious your thoughts. When we spoke earlier, you had talked about, if Doug Denny gets quite close to Katie Rosenberg in this primary, it would be a tough sign for her in the general. And based on these numbers, what do you think about Doug Denny's performance?
I think it's solid. I think it's not. I don't know if it's solid enough that Mayor Katie needs to worry. I think maybe I did say that, but I thought what I said was that if Doug win, like she has to win. She can't not win.
Oh, right.
If she,
Maybe,
I
maybe.
think I said if she doesn't win, that she has to worry. But also like Doug getting close would be a victory, and I'd say that's not quite close enough to be. Well, here's the thing. And I have to be careful how I'm going to word this because I don't want to be misconstrued.
Mhm.
I think most of Chris Wood's voters would go to Doug Denny,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
because they necessarily share values, but I'm going to think they're both conservative in very, very different ways.
Yeah.
But I think so. I think you could safely put that 5% and add it to Doug Denny's, and then you have you have pretty close to 47%, and you have a kind of a tight race.
Mhm.
I mean, feel free to disagree with me if you do.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that that's a reasonable assumption, but I really don't know. So
Yeah, well, I mean, well, we have to be careful, how much we draw from this because this is a really small.
that's also true.
Far more people are going to vote in the spring election than they do in the primary.
By what factor do you think the voting totals will increase? Like we're seeing Katie with 2,200 votes. Um, what type of numbers do you think the winning candidate would get in the general, roughly?
I'm actually going to look at the spring.
Yeah,
Oh,
because I would
wait,
be
that's
curious
not
about
it.
that because these numbers are very small numbers. So, you know, if you're talking about a difference of, what is it, 400 or so votes between Doug Denny and Katie Rosenberg, I wonder if each of them could see quite a big boost for the general.
So I tried to pull up the spring election on the historical reports, but it brought up like just this race with Trish Zunker. So I'm trying to see if there's another. Oh yeah, that's
We've
not
got
gonna
Catherine Kronenwetter with a comment in the chat saying 5K voted out of 26K registered. So that's a good metric.
that was for this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Catherine says 20% is really unrepresentative. I agree.
Hmm.
I agree
Hmm.
with that actually. I don't.
So we could say that all bets are off going into the general for at least the mayor election. I'm not
I'd
sure
say
about District 4.
here's what I would say with results that are that tight. You definitely can't draw
Hmm.
conclusions.
Yeah.
If I were Deb Weiss though, I'd be concerned about this because I don't see like a massive amount of I don't see like the primary or the spring election bringing in enough people to make a big change unless something dramatically happens.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I also think that's probably the case. They actually can be surprisingly predictive though. Like, because the primaries, as I recall, the primary for Kronenwetter village president last time pretty much played out the same way in the primary and the general, and it was pretty
Hmm.
decisive in the primary. Chris Voll like really ran away with the race, and then he ran away with it even more in the general. So yeah, we'll see. I think if I'm Ken Charnetsky or Sean Dumais, I'm a little worried about these results. I'm not happy about them.
Hmm.
But he might pull some of the people that voted for Straub or Kim Tapper. So that's possible. It's possible. Anything's possible. But yeah, Aaron Mishka getting like 20% of the vote. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of fascinating. What do you attribute that to?
Good question. I didn't really feel like responses really stood out a ton. Um,
Hmm.
I think a lot of them talked about professionalism, and I think that was a response to some of the stuff in Kronenwetter in the last couple. So I get that. He could be just really well known. Maybe maybe
Hmm.
he's got some kind of business. I kind of did actually.
Hmm.
I'm kind of looking up
No,
his profile right now. So what do you think about that?
I mean, my question just came from a place of, when there's so many candidates and one candidate gets nearly double what most others get. I guess it just begs the question of, why are they standing out so much? How typical do you think it would be for a village trustee to, be knocking on doors and, be really putting a lot of energy into meeting voters and convincing voters?
Honestly, it's usually what wins races.
Hmm.
At the local level, like you can make a huge impact knocking on doors. Although I know I do kind of wonder. I was listening to a breakdown of DeSantis's campaign and how it just sort of nosedived after looking so promising.
Hmm.
And one of the things was like they were the campaign people, his campaign people were talking about this network of door knockers they had, and one of the commenters was saying yeah, no one wants their door knocked down anymore. So I don't know, maybe that's changing because like I hate when
Hmm.
people knock on my door. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
so anyway, thanks for buying me some time. I wanted to pull up. This is Aaron Mitchell's profile. Is a dressed pretty professionally,
Hmm.
got the
Yeah.
professional look going on, and he's a younger guy, 38 years old.
Hmm.
I think it's
Absolutely.
funny that I now say people in 38 are younger. It's
Yeah. Well,
uh,
it's young in politics, that's for sure.
yeah, or at least it used to be. I mean, nowadays it's starting to become more common, but yeah, once upon a time it was really anyone. We used to have a joke in when I was in Stevens Point. The joke was that if you were 65, you were kind of a little bit of a too much of a youngster to be on the board yet. But I think that's changing a lot. Let's see. Yeah, he was a warehouse supervisor. So he's running for his family. He has two girls, age 3 and 1, and he talked about having good water and quality sewer conditions. There is some water issues going on in Kronenwetter too, but
Mm.
I haven't really. It's I haven't had time to like dive into them.
Hmm.
We need to invest responsibly in our infrastructure, keeping public safety is the main focus, and then making the necessary improvements, keeping things affordable so you don't pay more down the road. Let's see. And then I asked everybody about the role of a board member in interaction with staff. He said, my role as a board member is to help set policy that is best for all residents. I'll take pride in my responsibilities and keep an open line of communication, collaborating with other trustees to find and solve the important issues. The public should be well informed of what business is being conducted, and all village staff should be treated with respect. Being a village
Mm.
trustee is a privilege and should bear the highest of ethical standards. So, yeah, pretty well written, I would say.
Yep.
Kind of what you would expect, I suppose. But yeah, but I don't know. I guess he's a warehouse supervisor, so maybe he's well known for that. But yeah, otherwise, I don't know. Maybe he just knocked on a lot of doors,
Yeah,
and where other people didn't.
certainly possible.
Let's see. Is there anything else we really didn't talk about? I mean, the ballots cast seems pretty typical for a primary from what I've seen.
Hmm.
Pretty much.
There were four blank ballots cast. What do you make of that?
Nothing. I don't know what that means. People just like showed up and were like, nah, you know what? You can have it back. I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
feel like it.
Right.
That's wild. Let's see, did we get any?
Tracking the number of blank ballots cast, that could be an important indicator, in the longer term to pay attention to, though. If we see blank ballots going way up in the near future, it could be cause for concern or something.
1-2 trend, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The mystery of the blank ballots.
Yeah.
So Dawn Johnson in our chat says, I'm in Kronenwetter, only one candidate knocked on my door. Twice, 2 different days, same candidate. So which candidate was it? Do you mind
Yeah.
saying, Dawn? I'm curious. Was
Yeah.
it Aaron or was it someone else?
It would be fascinating to learn who the candidate in question was, because then we can see how they fared and maybe make some conclusion about whether it was effective for them to knock on doors.
Oh, she says it was Joel Straub, so I guess it wasn't effective.
Oh, okay.
Because he
Interesting.
he had was he dead last or was he second? Let me look here.
He was second last.
Second to last, yeah. Kim Tapper was the lowest vote total. So yeah, it used to always be the case, and I do kind of wonder if that's changing. Maybe people just because I've had people just come and hang up the door hanger and not knock on my door, but it used to be the thing like you just went around, and I know even in 2020, like prior to, because a lot of that happened before COVID, because people were out in like February and stuff. People were still telling me about knocking on a lot of doors and stuff. So at least it was common. I don't know if it still is, but yeah, I know people are starting to get. I think after COVID, people are starting to get a little more introverted. I've noticed, and maybe don't want to go out quite as much, and also. Yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of those patterns of people. So maybe people just don't want to have their door knocked on or don't want to be the one knocking on doors either. Hard to say.
Yeah, that too. I mean, I could imagine a solution to that being to go outside the grocery store or some kind of place where there would be a lot of foot traffic and you could speak to people while they're already out of the house and you're not, bothering them in that way.
Yeah, it might be tougher in Kronenwetter because I don't know if there's a lot of places where you could do that. And I don't think you're allowed to do that outside a public building. I don't think you can campaign on public property.
Right.
That was a big thing that came up last election. I think Mayor Katie filed a complaint against Milky because he made his announcement speech on the city hall steps, which was kind of a no-no.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, I guess to kind of sum things up, pretty interesting, kind of interesting elections, I guess. Nothing terribly surprising. I didn't really know what to expect in Kronenwetter. I wondered if that was going to be a case where the incumbents didn't do well, and that seemed to be largely the case. Either the incumbents or like prior incumbents didn't. We definitely saw a lot of the newcomers do well, and I think the two people who did the worst are the ones that didn't respond to my.
Oh, well, there's something.
Wait, I take it back. Kim Tapper, actually, no, Kim Tapper did respond.
Okay.
But Joel Straub and Tim Shaw didn't respond to my questionnaire, and they did second and third worst. So
Yeah.
make sure to get back to us, candidates, because that's been a pattern I've noticed. It's when people refuse. I had someone get really mad about us doing a questionnaire one time. It was a county board candidate, and he ended up not winning because he refused to participate. Well, I don't know that it was causal, but he made this big thing about. Well, it was kind of funny because he said something about how then people would just have their campaign staff fill them out, and I'm like, do you have a campaign staff for county board?
That would be maybe a volunteer staff.
That would be a little wild. I think most of the candidates are probably going to fill them out themselves because I don't think they have staff members who are going to I know like
Yeah.
I know the mayoral campaigns around here do, and they probably do in bigger cities like where city council and county board are like basically full-time jobs, like you're getting a salary that you can live off of. Here they're like it's like 6,000 for city council or something like that. Maybe just went up, I think, and county board is like 8,000, something along those lines. So, it's like side income, but you're not
Mhm.
gonna like quit your job and do that instead, right? So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know if people say funny things to journalists. It is what it is. Well,
And so,
what do you
so
think?
the
How do you think
saga.
oh,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say,
I was
how do you think our live stream went? It seemed kind of fun, huh?
definitely, yeah. I thought it was good.
Uh,
I thought it was fun and interesting. Maybe people can sound off in the comments as to their feedback, positive or negative, about how we did. um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I thought it was great.
feel free to comment on the video afterwards too. It'll be up there. So
But I was just gonna say, when we were just about to talk about how the stream went, we got our wires crossed. But I was gonna say it's the end of the saga of Christopher Wood that I know was fascinating for both of
oh.
us, and was a source of controversy in the run up to these primaries.
Well, it was, yeah, and I guess I didn't finish my story on that because like I did try to when I wrote about him, I did try to go like I wanted to interview him at the time because I just kind of wanted to know what motivated him to make these crazy speeches and to put it
Mm,
out there. And so I did look forward to I did look forward to interviewing him. I was also a little nervous about it and how it would be perceived, but like I wanted to talk to him because I think it's good to talk to people who seem to have odious or strange views and find out kind of what makes them tick. And I
mhm,
was really curious, and he was an interesting guy. I mean, he was very polite. He seemed to have had kind of a like a preacher's voice, very booming and authoritative. And I was like, I could see this guy being like a preacher somewhere.
mhm.
He seemed to have a good rapport with people. Like he seemed to kind of have a natural rapport with people. And but he also didn't really have much. Like he just didn't really seem to know much about city politics and how they worked. And his idea to have like these big weekly meetings on the 400 block didn't seem very tenable. This
Mhm.
sort of weird direct democracy approach, and of course, pretty hard to square his anti-Semitic views, which he did not walk back in any way. He was pretty clear that he said he was moving on from it, so I guess he's not going to make those speeches anymore. But
Mhm.
he did say that he felt that the Jews were the sons of Satan, and
Mhm.
he feels pretty clearly about that. And you had looked up you had looked up Christian identity, like this
Y-
ideology, this kind of extreme Christian right wing ideology that seemed very similar to a lot of the things he said.
Yeah, yeah. I at least had speculated on, a kind of, because it seemed like his views on Jewish people had some origin in his religious views, and so I had found
Mm.
that there was a lot of similarities to something called the Christian Identity Movement, that is kind of a
Mm.
right wing offshoot, sort of Christian offshoot.
Yeah, well, like you said, that saga is done, and we just that's yeah, that was very interesting. It's a very interesting little chapter in Wausau electoral history. So, well,
Yeah.
we did get some feedback. Devon, Catherine Kronenwetter says, "Good stuff. Love local info." So
Thank you,
cool.
Catherine.
I guess we did good. Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Devon, thanks for joining me today on the live stream. I think it was a lot of fun. If you want to hang around, I'll just chat with you for a few seconds after I end the stream, and
Absolutely.
then I'll let you go. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Interesting election results. Check. You can see the full results in the Wausonian on Thursday morning. And otherwise, have a good night, and we'll see you later.
Bye bye.